Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Mr. Dogwell333, and welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4 with the 1000-Week Reich mod. Now, last time we joined each other, we hopped into the nation of Iraq, and under the guidance of the Hashemite dynasty and some pan-Arab Hashemite ideology and the backing of the military, which you had to ensure via gunpoint and bribery, we managed to hold on to Iraq despite our failure in the 7 Days War, or the first Arab-Israeli War, excuse me, and eventually managed to unify with Jordan, and then Syria, and then, after the Egyptians tried to undermine us, the whole of the Middle East. It was truly a beautiful thing. It really was. But that was then, and this, I'm afraid, is now. So we have to hop in to another nation and try to find some new good times to have. So let's go ahead and hop in. Now, there are a couple options. I don't want to hop in and play Iraqi, and as much fun as that was, I want to mix something up. In Syria, it seems a little too immediately similar to hop into. So, we have the choice between Israel and Palestine, which, you know, it's not a contentious thing to talk about at all. We're going to be hopping in as Israel today, mainly because I wanted to mix up from the Arab gameplay, mix up, see what it's like elsewhere in the Middle East. So that's what we're doing. We're going to try to navigate this kindly and respectfully to each other. We're going to try to keep the comment section from turning into a horrible political, geopolitical mess. We're probably not going to avoid that realistically, but you know, I'm gonna play. I'm gonna try to have fun, and I'm probably gonna make some dumbass jokes, but you know, we'll see what ends up happening, I suppose. Never since their defeat to the Roman Empire has the Jewish nation laid so broken. Millions were wiped out by the black tide that spread across Egypt. Refugee ships who had escaped the Dark Continent were turned away by an unbelieving British government, with lone bands of starving refugees escorted by exhausted volunteers making the treacherous journey through wide forests and scorching deserts to their promised land. Then, as if the torture at the hands of Nazis was not enough to satisfy the world, when the insurgency became too much for the British occupiers to handle, they lured the people with false promises and half-hearted treaties, the failure of which have only amplified the nightmare that the Jewish people have found themselves in. But the Jew does not give up so easily. He never has. Through the pain and suffering of the Shoah, through the betrayals and broken promises, and through the endless trials and tribulations, the indomitable, unbreakable spirit of the eternal nation lives on. For as long as the Jewish soul still yearns, the 2,000-year-old hope of the children of Israel to once again become one in the brotherhood of nations is not yet lost. Well, it's a very beautiful sentiment. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out realistically. So let's go ahead and hop in as a nation. Well, not quite the nation yet. The territory of Yeshuv. That's a fun little name for it. Yeshuv. Well, let's load in any second now. Yeah, I'm a little nervous about how this is gonna go. Probably should have took at least went to bed before I started recording this, but I'm excited enough. I want to record the first part, and then we'll go ahead and wrap things up. I am ready to play. Alright, here we Oh, here's our starting situation. Let's start with some basic research. So we'll start with technology, and then we will go on to construction. Construction's going to be better to start off with. Meanwhile, we have a whole 2 divisions in our army. Not the best to start off with. We have... let's get a field marshal. We'll go with Yigael Yadin. And for a general, we will go with... Do we have any defensive guys? Because we're going to have some stuff pop up. There's old Yitzhak Rabin. Rest in peace. We'll go with Mordecai McLeff in the meanwhile, because we can't quite get that sorted. Let me go ahead and get the timer started as well. How are we doing industry-wise? We have fuck all, really. Okay, yeah. Well, I'm not shocked by that, I suppose. Let's take a look at, well, let's take a look at some decisions first. First, we have the Dreams of a Nation. Signed on August 8th, 1947, the Jerusalem Accords outlined a 5-year-long gradual independence plan for the Mandate of Palestine region. While the treaty was not liked by either side of the populace, representatives of both the Jewish and Arab community were willing to sign it in order to reach a settlement. With the end of the withdrawal period on August 8th in sight, many are hopeful to see the start of a new chapter in the nation's history. Just a few months left. So, at the end of the withdrawal period, the British are supposed to leave, and then we're all going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya, and nothing controversial will ever happen, either in this game or in real life. No, that's not what we have going for us. We also have the Assembly of Representatives. There we are. So, we have 4 different parties. I am going to read all of these in the next video, because I'm a little tired, and I'm kind of, not quite on the verge of crashing out, but I am tired, so we'll just leave things there. We also have the Middle Eastern Cold War, which we had from last time. We have Toronto Accord Unity. Very charming to have that. As the eyes of the world focused on Nazi conquests of Europe and the changing orders in the East Asia, new conflict has risen amidst the changing tide in the Middle East. With the increasingly growing calls for political change against the British-backed monarchies and French colonial republics, new revolutionary movements have been forming, mimicking the fascistic movements of Europe and the rise of a left-wing nationalism in Asia. Amidst this political upheaval, the world's most valuable resources lie beneath the desert sands. Control of this black gold equates to control over the world's economy. Also, upheavals attracted the eye of major world powers, be them capitalistic, fascistic, or socialistic. The Middle East's future lies on a knife's edge, and many ask, when the old order fades, what will rise from the ashes? Well, that's a question, isn't it? Let's take a look at our leader here, Mr. David Ben-Gurion. Days of Yosef Gruen always believed that he would be the one to succeed Herzl as the leader of the Zionist cause. Many had called him delusional, perhaps a madman, maybe a dictator. He, however, would embrace Herzl's dictum. If you will it, it is no dream. Born in 1886 in what would now become Zaikhanau to a family of poor and uneducated farmers, Gruen would take an interest in Zionism at a young age. Joining Poali Zion after the Kishinev pogrom, he would go on to become a high-ranking member of the party on several occasions, meeting with the influential Jewish leaders such as Ber Borchov. After Borchov's departure to America, Gruen would go on to move to Palestine, where he would be recruited by Yisrael Shokat's Palestine branch of Poali Zion. Shokat believed that Gruen would be a useful tool for him to expand his influence, while in reality Gruen would utilize every opportunity to gain power in the party. To counterbalance this, Shokov recruited newly arrived Yitzhak ben Zvi to the party to counterbalance Gruen. Fed up, he resigned from the party and moved to Segeira, where he would finally adopt a Hebrew name, Ben Gurion. After the Jewish general of the Second Jewish-Roman Revolt, hoping to gain something of the fire that drove that ancient warrior. When the Yishuv was deported from the Ottoman Palestine during the Great War, Ben Gurion returned to politics, where he would try to cooperate with the British to drive the dream of a Jewish nation into the modern age, forming a new party, Mapai, and its paramilitary, the Haganah. And it was during the Arab Revolt of the late 30s where Ben Gurion's policy of restraint helped legitimize the Zionist movement in the eyes of the world. Through the pogroms, through the suffering of the Shoah, through all the trials and tribulations that the Jewish nation has found itself in, Ben Gurion has persevered, and now the young statesman is determined to forge a path for the young nation under his wing, just as he shepherded its predecessors in the interbellum era. What Hess and Herzl guided into being, Ben Gurion aims to lead to maturity. If that means the Jewish people must make the desert bloom around them, well, the Jews have always desired the impossible, and Ben Gurion is nothing if not a servant of the Jews. We have a little Knesset pop up, which is cool to see. We have Eliezer Kaplan as our economic guy, I believe. Yitzhak Grunbaum as our security guy. Moshe Sharet as our foreign secretary. And David Ben Gurion as our head of state. We're a disarmed nation off the bat, which is a little awkward. Or it's going to be a little unfortunate coming up. We start off with a couple modifiers. We have Accord, Sphere, Trading Modifier. Nothing we're not used to. The British occupation, which kind of just fucking sucks and means we're not going to be able to do much of all for a long time. The 1947 Jerusalem Accords, signed by Clement Attlee, David Ben Gurion, and Raghib Nashashibli, split the Mandated Palestine into two semi-autonomous districts, with the British retaining direct control of Jerusalem and the Jaffa Corridor. Both of these districts have no army, a foreign policy controlled by the United Kingdom, and the British military can enter their territory in time to crush any insurgents they deem threatening to regional stability. The 5-year withdrawal period expires on August 8, 1952. Will the British honor the award and leave the region? We'll have to see. Well, next we have if 8 million cattle. What have you done to us, you freedom-loving peoples? Guardians of justice, defenders of the high principles of democracy and of the brotherhood of man. What have you allowed to be perpetuated against a defenseless people while you stood aside and let it bleed to death without offering to help or succor? Without calling on the fiends to stop in the language of retribution, which alone they would understand. Why do you profane our pain and wrath with empathy, with empty expressions of sympathy, which ring like a mockery in the ears of millions of the damned in the torture houses of Nazi Europe? Why have you not even supplied arms to our ghetto rebels, as you have done for the partisans and underground fighters of other nations? Why did you not help us establish contacts with them, as you have done in the case of the partisans in Greece and Yugoslavia and the underground movements elsewhere? If instead of Jews, thousands of English, American, or Russian women, children, and aged had been tortured every day, burnt to death, asphyxiated in gas chambers, would you have acted in the same way? David Ben Gurion, Proclamation of a Jewish Insurgency, the 9th of April, 1942. If 8 million cattle had been slaughtered, there would have been more interest. And that's rough to read. That's hard. None is too many. Without the blind complacency of the world, we would not be speaking about the 8 million of blessed memory. Nations simply looked away, their beliefs in the rights of man and equality disappearing in an instant. The drip of emigration became a river and then a flood of refugees, the likes of which have been surpassed only by the Great War. But the politicians of the world did not care. When asked how many of us they were willing to take in, they simply replied, "None is too many." The decades upon decades of Jewish thought in Europe have come to an abrupt, gruesome end, perhaps forever. But this end was not simply at the hands of Germans, but all Goyim upon whom we felt would stand up for us. The Bundists threw their lot in with the Soviets, believing that it was necessary to build a new home in the Pale. The integrationists in Germany and France felt that to be Jewish was not so important as to be a patriot, a good citizen of the country in which they found themselves. The rabbis believed that with the help of God, we could overcome anything, be it pogroms, state suppression, or the urbanization and secularization that brought about the end of the shtetl. They are all gone. And our tribe is only left as foreigners everywhere, variously seen as Levantine scum or disloyal, unwanted squatters on the land where David encamped. The next year that we promised ourselves has come, but what do we have to show for it? We're all Zionists now on account of the fact that here is the only possible option. In all parts of the world, even in those where there are supposedly civilized and democratic nations, and even in those where we have found ourselves at home since the captivity, we have found that none is too many Jews. Next we have ad halom. Decent modifiers, but we can't change our recruitment or economy laws or ministries by ourselves. Never since the fall of the Second Temple has the Jewish nation been in such despair. Never since the Spanish expulsion has the Jewish spirit been so crushed. And although families have been lost and homes have been burned, never since the great revolt of Judas Maccabeus have the children of Israel been more resolute, more steadfast in their unbreakable determination to dig in their heels and let out one final battle cry. Up to here. Next up we have the Histadrut, which gives us sex population, some different modifiers as well. Formed in 1920 by the labor Zionist faction of the Yishuv, the General Federation of Labor is in the land of Israel, or Histadrut for short, is relative to the country's size by far the most powerful labor union to not only be Yishuv, but the entire Levant, if not the rest of the continent. Representing the majority of the Yishuv's trade unions, it has vast influence over the country's industry, agriculture, education system, healthcare, and more, making its relation with the government paramount to the stability of the nation. And finally, we have the Second Insurgency. The signing of a Jerusalem Accord was a move of desperation. With the British blocking immigration of Jews fleeing the horror of Nazi tyranny to Europe, most of the Yishuv signed the treaty with hopes that they could use the promised autonomy to save those who managed to survive until then. However, this treaty effectively destroyed any hope of Jewish rule in Jerusalem, something that was simply unacceptable to much of the populace. On July 20th, only 4 days after the signing of the treaty, Yitzhak Shamir, leader of the Irgun Tzvai Leumi, or Etzel, announced the beginning of a new insurgency against the United Kingdom. It's not known where the Etzel received their arms, but it has enough supply to be a consistent thorn on the United Kingdom's side. Well, there we go. Before we kick off our fun little adventure, we got to take a look at the what ideology we're working with. We are the land of Israel's Workers' Party, or the Miflaget Poi Eretz Israel. Apologies, by the way, to any Israelis watching this who are wincing right now at how I'm butchering your language. I barely speak English, if you couldn't tell already. It's going to be an uphill battle. I'm trying my best. I might record this all in one block, so you might not be able to correct me. But if you want to tell me for my future reference and notes, I would much appreciate it. Anyhow, so we have labor Zionism. Contrary to the political Zionism founded by Theodor Herzl, which has fallen out of favor of increasingly socialist Yishuv, labor Zionism believes that an independent Jewish state cannot be formed without the effort of a Jewish working class making aliyah to the land of Israel. It advocates for creating a socialist Jewish society with rural kibbutzism and moshavim and an urban proletariat. Well, there we go. Well, Altira Yisrael. It is the darkest hour of the Jewish people. Generations have been lost. Entire families have been erased. But the Jewish people are people who have survived what no one else has. We will survive this dark hour too, if only because we have no other choice. O Israel, do not fear, for a young lion cub are you not. And if a lion roars, who will not fear? There we go. Let us commence. When Moses Hess wrote Rome and Jerusalem in 1862, he envisioned a great Jewish society, one where every Jew, whether they be Ashkenazi, Sephardi, or Mizrahi, whether they be rich or poor, whether they be religious or secular, was welcome. Hess committed himself to this dream for his entire life, but the world's reception was cold and condescending. What need was there for a Jewish nation? Europe had become a haven for pluralism and emancipation. Surely the Jews would eventually find a home there. Hess died a decade later with his dream unfulfilled and the world ignorant to his ever-relevant predictions. They would eventually be proven wrong. On a cold winter day in Paris, 1895, Captain Alfred Dreyfus is degraded of his rank. His sword is broken, his medals are stripped. The crowd chants, "Death to the Jew!" In close proximity to Dreyfus stands a young and rather unremarkable Jewish journalist for the Vienna Free Press. They had been covering the affair for several months. He was not convinced of the captain's guiltiness, but at this moment the subject was of less interest to him than the crowd. Captain Dreyfus had been accused of leaking military secrets to an enemy state, but the crowd was not chanting, "Death to the traitor!" France was the first nation to emancipate the Jews. Yet here he was, standing in front of the crowd, more interested in the captain's Jewish identity rather than his suspected treason. It was here that the journalist realized that equal citizenship would never guarantee social acceptance. To the world, the Jews, whether loved, hated, or indifferent, would always be Jews. And so Theodor Herzl returned to Vienna. Well, Dead Sea. How many lost? How many left? The answer to these questions is unknown. Little to no information on the fate of our brothers and sisters in Europe since the dark tide swept over the continent escapes. Those who managed to flee tell horrific tales of industrialized slaughter, the likes of which the world has never seen. What are we meant to do? How can we go on? Who knows if we can? We'll have to wait and see. I don't want to be so bleak starting off, but also this is just bleak. My God. I usually think of TNO as the more writing-heavy mod, but I gotta give, and I will give credit to the 1000 Week Reich team here. The writing here is really, really solid, I gotta say. After 2 decades have passed since the rise of Adolf Hitler and his Nazi regime of terror, 2 decades of pain, 2 decades of hate, 2 decades of suffering, 2 decades of loss. The insurmountable cost paid by the Jewish people rivals no other. The nature of the Jewish diaspora means that they could barely even put up a fight. The past 2 decades in Europe can only be compared to the Great Exodus or to Haman's planned genocide in ancient Persia. In another world, in the land of Israel, some semblance of stability exists. With the United Kingdom's surrender, the war spared the Holy Land. However, its echoes reached it just the same. The 1 million plan and its legacy still haunts the country to this day. What few refugees did manage to escape the dark shadow over Europe, but with them only destroyed families and Shattered hopes. Generations lost, remembered only by ghosts. A dead sea of salted wounds. The 1947 Jerusalem Accord set the path for the abolition of the hated Mandate of Palestine and created the districts which would eventually become their own independent nations. It was supposed to be an end to the conflict and a path to peace, but the British could not understand the reality of the region, and their treaty has only empowered the radical faction of the Estel and the Al-Muqaddas. Even a blind man can see the promised independence is simply a mirage. Just our luck, huh? When David Ben-Gurion shook hands with Clement Attlee and Raghib Ashashibli in Jerusalem on that fateful day in 47, the smile for the camera hurt him the most. The tree was supposed to be the epilogue of his grand adventure, but even the people listening to the radio at home could tell that this was not the end, simply the end of the beginning. The Jerusalem Accord laid out the foundations for the future independence of the Mandate of Palestine, was hailed in the rest of the world as a great victory, the answer to an unsolvable problem. But neither side was aware of the reality that at the 5-year withdrawal period would likely not end the way it was supposed to. The Jewish nation had suffered so much, and the small victory was not the end. Any home not built for hot days or rains is not a home. Dead sea of salted wounds eventually heals. Pain comes in many forms, whether it be a fall or a cut, a burn or a disease, a knife or a bullet. Every human has experienced pain, and many have tried to cure pain, but pain serves a purpose, even if unpleasant. While Jewish people currently experience a pain not felt by any nation in history, we must know that pain eventually strengthens the body, and time heals even the deepest of wounds. Well, onward we go. The darkest days in all of the Jews' history are upon us. The Jewish nation has suffered a fate unlike any other, but as the Jews in Egypt or in Persia did not give up, so must the Jews of today. Not all is lost, and time can heal even the deepest of wounds. And so the children of Israel remain unbroken, steadfast in their indomitable determination to become one in the brotherhood of nations. And they remember that as long as a Jewish soul still yearns, our hope is not yet lost. And so together, the people sang. Well, we have the matters at hand. Half a year's left until we're granted our independence. It has been a long journey and much was sacrificed to reach this point, but we're approaching the end. For now, we must keep focusing on developing the land that we fought for so dearly. Let's head up to speed 5. The Spanish-Moroccan conflict. I forget, does Morocco have a focus tree at all? I forget. They don't know. I think that's mostly just for Spain, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. Well, onwards we go. Wanted for murder. Butcher of Estruma. Trial for murder. Now. These were but a few of the many signs being held by the protesters behind the security fence of the British Army's headquarters in Tel Aviv. Along with them were images of former High Commissioner Harold McMichael, some of which display him with Hitler's mustache or a swastika on his sleeve. Today was the 10-year anniversary of the disappearance of the Struma, a show refugee ship from Romania whose 800 passengers were, after escaping the Nazis, sent back to the Black Sea after being denied refuge in mandatory Palestine due to McMichael's white paper. which helped would ban Jewish immigration to Palestine just in time for the Nazis' conquest of Europe. A few days after, the ship was denied entry to Palestine and turned back to Romania. Contact with it was lost and the crew was assumed to have perished. This disaster, which shook the entire country, was the final straw which sparked the first Jewish insurgency. George was not even aware of the event until his commanding officer warned them of the possible protest the day before. What does it even have to do with him? He wasn't a policeman. Stan was right! A man in the crowd yelled, possibly referring to the now-dead radical Etzel terrorist Avraham Stern's assassination attempt on McMichael. George couldn't decipher who it was out of a large crowd. He kept reading the signs. Nazis of London must be tried. A poster of Halifax and Hitler kissing made him let out a chuckle. Suddenly a group of protesters began trying to climb over a lower part of the fence near him. Stand back! George shouted. They didn't stop, and one of them made a pass. He tried to call for help, but his friends didn't hear him over the crowds yelling. Stop! Stand back! He yelled again. The man made it past the fence and was heading towards him. What to do? Get back! The man continued. Why him? He wasn't a policeman. He wasn't trained for... The crowd went silent. Yeah. Of course, Germany gets the atom bomb. Just our luck, huh? It's been 4.5 years since the signing of the Jerusalem Accords, which laid out the foundation for the future independence of the Mandated Palestine. The Jewish majority district, consisting of the coastal plains and the Galilee, is governed by the Yeshu, with the Assembly representatives acting as the government. The current ruling coalition, led by Mapai, the Land of Israel Workers' Party, consists of an assortment of different socialist parties. The second largest socialist party, Mapam, the United Workers' Party, is not included in coalition mainly due to their more vocal support of India, which Ben-Gurion has feared will worsen relations with London. On the right, there is a liberal capitalist general Zionist, who have largely faded in popularity in the past decade due to public disillusionment with the British's handling of the conflict. The final major faction, Hatzodar, the Union of Revisionist Zionists, is a more radical organization that split from the issue following the Jerusalem Accords. Its ties to the Etzel paramilitaries involved in an insurgency against the UK. With the withdrawal period set to end in July, the Yeshuv appeared to be ready for a final declaration of independence. However, it is painfully obvious that the British do not fully grasp the situation of the region, and that further complications may arise. All will yet be well in the land of Israel. While we are here, let's get charismatic. Boop, boop. That was my alarm. But we're going to finish off some of these guys real quick. Some of these focuses as well. There we are. There you go, Yigel. And, well, this is what we got right now. This is what we'll have to come back to next time, because I am going to leave things here, my friends. Thank you, as always, for watching. If you liked this video, leave a like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you have any comments or feedback, leave them in the comment section below. I read all the comments I get, and I do appreciate any feedback you might have for me. Check out my various links down in the description box below. Hit the sub button to keep updated with uploads as they come out weekdays and Saturdays. And, yeah, I'm going to leave things there. Thanks as always for watching, my friends. My name has been Mr. Dogbot333. And I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.